So what is happening in Ottawa on Monday?
Well, I've done the formal issuing of the step one. I did that in Hamilton because you can go to any court to swear out the information. That's what they call the charge sheet. But the charges, all criminal cases have to be heard in the jurisdiction of where the crime was allegedly committed. And so I have to drive to Ottawa on Monday to present the evidence there before a justice of the peace that Justin Trudeau did commit obstructing justice under the criminal code.
And is that the hearing that's private, where the Crown is there as well, Trudeau's lawyers are not, and you have to convince that judge to issue a charge? Is that the step we're talking about?
Yes, that's the step, and I'm allowed to call witnesses if I want. On Monday, I will be presenting the evidence that's already on the Justice Department's website. There's the taped phone calls, there's the sworn testimony from various people, there's some video. And so I'll present all of that step by step and go through I'll present also the case law on what are the elements needed for each charge that I'm alleging. And as long as I provide some evidence for each one of the elements, the Justice of Peace must issue the charge.
Huh. Now, are you, from a procedure point of view, do you know if the Crown will be there? Have they been in contact with you? Has the Justice Department assigned lawyers to this case? Are they taking it seriously, or do they regard this as a gimmick?
Well, the Crown's always there. There's always a Crown in every criminal courtroom in this country, and so there will be a Crown. It won't be assigned just for this particular case, because what will happen on that day is any other private prosecution, and they are becoming more common, and any peace bonds that people are trying to get, which are also done in camera, those will all be assigned to one courtroom, so the Crown will handle all those cases in one day. Someone else attempted to lay this charge 3 weeks ago. They got the paperwork wrong. I did drive up to Ottawa to present the evidence, and the Crown withdrew it before we even got into the courtroom. But they did give a very detailed explanation to the court, and we ordered a transcript. And it seemed like they took it seriously. They just saw all the flaws in the paperwork and said, based on the errors in the paperwork, it shouldn't proceed. And so that's why I re-swore out the information in Ottawa, because I have experience doing this.
Well, that's very interesting that the Crown took it seriously enough to give a substantive reply. Now, you mentioned that the judge is a justice of the peace. Again, I'm rusty in my law, but that's a fairly junior level decider.
Well, in Canada, whether it's a police officer, the process for getting a charge, whether it's a police officer or private citizen, is the same thing, same way. A police officer has to go before a justice of the peace and provide information, and the justice will issue the arrest warrant.
Got it.
So all criminal cases start with a justice of the peace in Canada.
Thank you for look. I'm learning from you, Gary. I mean, you're the guy who's done that. So
I will also say that Canada is one of the only countries in the world that allows this.
I know the UK does.
Never allowed it. Canada codified this in 2002, which is fairly modern, and they decided that there has to be a way for citizens to lay charges against government officials. And that's exactly what the motive behind them creating this in the criminal code. It wasn't so you can charge your neighbor. You can do that. But the real reason was that there has to be a way when the police and the Crown will not prosecute a case, that citizens can bring forward charges and are allowed to prosecute it unless the Crown steps in.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting, and I thank you for the education that you just told me. I mean, I suppose I should know that, but I'm rusty on my criminal procedure. So you will be on Monday at what, 10 a.m. in the courthouse there on Elgin?
Yes, at 10 o'clock on. I believe it's 9:30.
9:30. So at 9:30 you walk in, and there'll be other people in that same court, and you've got your evidence, and the Crown will be there, and you will attempt to show, like a police officer would, that you have a substantial enough case the charges ought to be issued against Justin Trudeau, and then whether the Crown steps in to stay them or steps in to prosecute them is up to them. Do I have that right? Because I'm learning from you here, Gary.
Well, generally what happens is the Crown will allow you to present all the evidence you have. Everybody else in the courtroom will be ordered to leave. And you then present your evidence. The Justice of Peace will then make a decision to issue the charge. From that moment on, the Crown normally just says, we will now review it, and then they'll make a decision on the first court appearance. But they are allowed by law to intervene at that stage and say, we're going to stay the charge right away.
Right.
But normally they review these over a period of months or 2 months to decide whether or not they're going to take over the whole case.
That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show, which is a show I do every day. I do a monologue, interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at premium.rebelnews.com.